In this free course, I will show you how you can turn any image into an awesome reel or a TikTok video easily. Believe it or not, these videos were created from images. Whether you are an influencer or a graphic designer or a motion designer, you can easily learn this and apply it to boost your growth, hopefully make more money and gain followers. Now we achieve this by using parallax effect. In animation, the parallax effect is a technique that creates an illusion of depth by using two-dimensional images that move at different speeds. Now this effect is achieved by separating layers, then animating a 3D camera in After Effects. The camera is animated in a way that turns a simple boring image into a video. Okay, so here are the basic steps we will be taking in this course. So step 1 is to separate the layers in Photoshop. Step 2 is to import the Photoshop file in After Effects. Step 3 is to create camera and adjust the layers accordingly in 3D space. Step 4 is to animate the camera and camera controller, which we create using nulls. Step 5 is to add some elements like text or birds to hide the distortions, and step 6 is to edit the rendered file with sound effects and music to sell the effect. Also, I have used 2 plugins throughout this course. These plugins are free. The first one is FXConsole, which is free, and the other one is Animation Composer, which is also free. Okay, so make sure that you download both of them before you start. So I have compiled all the resources required for this course in one document. So this document includes free plugins that are used in this course and the parallax image collection that you have to use, especially if you are a beginner. You have to use this collection. And then I have also included how to import the Photoshop file into After Effects, because it's a basic thing. It doesn't have to take an entire tutorial on its own, so I haven't included that in the course. And after that, I have also included every shortcut that has been used in the course. Okay, and then there is the course summary. Okay, make sure you download it right now because the shortcuts are really important. I have displayed them wherever I can, but chances are I might have missed some places. Okay, so make sure you download it right now. First, we are going to import the photo. I have imported the photo already and I have duplicated it 2 times. Now I'm going to work on the first layer. So I'm going to grab a selection tool and then I'm going to start selecting the subject. That is the guy here. Okay. So I'm going to start the selection process and I'm going to be careful. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, now we need to select entire subject, which could be tough sometimes. As you could see, I'm not able to select. So the faster way to do that is use select and mask. Once the select and mask panel open up, and if your subject is isolated, go to view mode and select matching ants. And then we are going to use the lasso tool to select even more accurately. Now remember that shortcuts here. To add the selection, press Shift, and to subtract the selection, press Alt or Option. Now as you could see here, I'm making some mistakes, but that's completely okay. That's part of the learning process. And it's okay if you make mistakes. You don't have to be perfect in this. Okay. And yeah, make sure that you don't miss out any remaining part, just like the portion here in the legs. Now go to output and select layer mask so that it will be applied to a mask. Now turn on the bottom layer like I did and click on the mask while holding the control. Okay, now we do that to copy the mask from the top layer to the bottom layer. Okay, now go to select menu and then modify and click on expand. Okay, now I'm going to add 5 pixels here. Okay, we do this expansion to give Photoshop more data around the subject that it can fill the space in better way. Okay, now go to edit, fill and choose content aware fill. And as you can see, the magic is done. The subject has been removed. Now you can press Ctrl D to deselect. Okay. Now choose the masked layer and then click on delete to release the mask. Now duplicate the layer where we applied the content aware fill. Here we will be separating the boat in the same way. Okay. So first we are going to select the boat. Okay. I'm going to hide the subject here, and the first we are going to select the boat. After selecting the boat, I'm going to go to select and mask, and I'm going to try to select it in a better and more consistent way. Also, I want to remind you that we are not striving for perfection here. And I'm pretty satisfied here with this. And now I'm going to go to output selection and choose layer mask. Now it's masked here. Now click on the mask like last time. Click on the mask while holding Control or Command, and then click on the bottom layer. And then we are going to follow the same process where we are going to expand the pixels. Okay, expand the selection here. Now go to Edit, select Fill, and then choose Content Aware Fill like we did the last time. Okay, and there it is. As you could see, by magic we have completely removed, and then I'm going to delete that. And as you see here, we have selected and separated the layers on its own, and then we are going to work in After Effects. And yeah, one of the most important thing here is to rename it correctly so that we could use it in a better way. Okay, so first of all, what we did last time, import the picture, and now duplicate it by pressing Ctrl or Command plus J. Okay, Ctrl plus D doesn't work here. Now this image is more complicated than the last. I want selection to be more accurate, so I will be using the pen tool because I am more comfortable with it. Now you can use lasso tool if you are comfortable with it, but I've been using After Effects for a long time and I don't use Photoshop much, and so I'm going to use pen tool. Now select the pen tool and start to draw the mask around the subject. Okay, once the selection is done, a path will be created. Now go to Path and Ctrl plus click on the path to select the mask. Now go to Layers and click on Layer Mask icon, and the mask is now created. Okay, now duplicate the bottom layer by pressing Ctrl or Command plus J. Then Ctrl plus click on the mask and then click on the bottom layer. Now I made a mistake here. I forgot to expand the selection. So don't skip this step if you want accurate results. Just go to Select, then click on Modify and then choose Expand. Now expand selection by 5 pixels. We did it in the last chapter, so you must be aware of that. Now we are going to repeat the same process. Go to Edit and then click on Fill to choose Content Aware Fill. Now as you can see here, the background has some distortion. Now we are going to correct this distortion using Clone Stamp tool. So Clone Stamp tool allows you to copy, or I should say clone, pixel from one place to another. To pick sample, press Alt and click. And to apply the sample, click on the place you want. For example, I'm cloning the floor's pixel here and applying it to the distortion. Okay. Now you have to remember that you should clone the pixels from the surrounding regions, or else it will be distorted even further. Now repeat the process for every major distortions that you see. Now you don't have to worry about every distortion. We will be using some cheap tricks to cover distortions with some other object, but we will do that later in After Effects directly. And if you want, you can do that in Photoshop as well, but you don't have to be perfect. That's the point of this. Okay. Now I'm going to duplicate the layer so I can select this white car that you could see on the screen. This process is going to be the same, so I'm going to speed up the recording. And after repeating the process, we are almost done here. I'm going to import the Photoshop file into After Effects, and here it's called image1. So first of all, I'm going to rename this to original, and I'm not going to touch it because if we mess up, I'm going to use it later, and I'm going to duplicate this and use this, edit this file to do all the work in this file. And I'm not going to touch the original. In that way, I will preserve the original, and if I make mistake, I will be able to use it later. And now I'm going to change the size of this composition, that is 1080 by 1920. Okay, now as you can see, the size is messed up, so I'm going to parent both of them to sky, and then I'm going to resize it until it fits. Now I'm just checking out whether every layer is on its own or not. So I'm not satisfied with how this home looks. It looks tiny. I want it to be bigger. So I'm going to duplicate it and bring it down and make it look as if it's a bigger image. Okay, so I'm going to use some chip tricks here. So I'm going to mask it. In that way, both the images will blend in. Okay, and then I'm going to first mask it, and then I'm going to feather it. Now I'm going to select this bottom layer, and then I'm going to use the transform property and flip it. I'm going to flip it horizontally, and yeah, this looks much better than the last one. I'm going to make some adjustments here. I don't like this. I still don't like this. I'm not satisfied with this. Okay, so I'm going to parent the bottom home to the top home, and I'm going to play here. I'm going to adjust here until this home looks like the main object, because right now it doesn't look like a main object. It looks tiny. I don't like it. And so adjust it. Okay, so I'm satisfied with this. Okay, now in this project, we are going to pre-compose everything so that we can use it further. Okay, so I'm going to pre-compose it by calling it home PC. You can call it whatever you want. Okay, after that, I'm going to use both these layers and pre-compose it. Okay, now I'm going to turn them into 3D. I mean, come on, this is a Parallax course. Now I'm going to create camera using Ctrl-Alt-Shift-C. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to change the Z property on the background, and then I'm going to change the scale so that it fits. And now I'm going to play around with the Z property on the home layer. Okay, it looks good. Now I'm going to play around with camera to see how I want end results to look. Okay, you might have to play around a little bit if you are not a pro at this, and it is understandable. Okay, so play around in rotation properties and in different properties. Press P for the position property, and I'm going to play around with it. Okay, it is starting to look good. Now I'm going to resize the sky here, and I'm going to bring down the home because the gap looks terrible. Now I'm going to bring lined paper onto this. Okay, it's our element that we are going to use in this project to give sense as if we are writing something on the picture. And so I'm going to apply tint. Now I already applied to the wrong layer. I'm going to copy and paste it on here. Now you could also use fill. You don't have to use tint like I did. It was a stupid move. Now I'm going to mask it because I want the note to be blended in the background. I'm going to play around a little bit with the mask here. We're now going to turn it into 3D, and I should have done that before. And I'm going to bring the mask even closer so that the vertical lines disappear. And this looks good. Okay, so we have done some basic adjustments here. And
So I'm going to apply the keyframe to the position property by pressing Alt-Shift-P. And now I'm going to drop the marker at 5 seconds because that's the duration of the composition I want. And then I'm going to start playing with position property and to see what fits, what doesn't fit. And now I want you to remember the gaps. They look terrible and there are ways to fill that, and I'm going to show you how in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to apply motion tile. Instead of duplicating it, there is a better way to do that, and that is to apply motion tile. Motion tile basically repeats the composition multiple times. I'm going to click on mirror edge and then I'm going to change the output height, and as you can see, the gap is gone for good. Okay, it looks good. Now this is how the animation look. I'm not satisfied with it. And so we are going to have to play with different settings and different properties. I'm going to create null object, the shortcut that you see on the screen, and I'm going to align it to in the center. And then I'm going to parent camera to the null object. Now we are going to use this null as a controller, and now I'm going to turn it into 3D and drop keyframes on the rotation property, each and every property. And now we are going to play with different properties. Now the background, this is the gap in the background, I want to fill that too. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate the motion tile from the home PC to the sky PC. Okay, and now the gap is filled. Keep playing with different adjustments here and there. You don't have to be perfect. Make sure that you don't strive to be perfect in this. This doesn't have to be perfect. Play with different settings here. Okay, now I'm going to select all the keyframes, and I'm going to easy ease them so that the motion becomes better. And it looks good, but it could be better. Okay, and we are going to make it better, don't worry.
Remember, just because you use dad jokes doesn't mean your girl will call you daddy. Until we meet again.
Okay, I'm going to push the rotation keyframes even further so it becomes slow. The video is going to be 5 seconds long only, but I don't want to end the rotation there. Okay, so now we are going to play with text effect that I'm trying to create here. I'm going to change the Z property and see how it looks. Now I'm going to enter the text here, and I have changed the tint effect and I've used this font that you see on the screen. Now the problem that I'm going to face in this technique is that both the layers has to be on the same composition, and so I'm going to pre-compose it. First of all, I'm going to turn them into a 2D layer, and then I'm going to adjust it, and then I'm going to pre-compose them. And so I'm going to call this text PC. And hit OK. And now I'm going to open text PC, and now we are going to play around. So first of all, I'm going to change the tint here. I'm going to change the tint to white, and I'm going to delete the mask here. And I'm going to adjust the text and increase the scale of it and make it multiple layered like this. I'm going to adjust some of this. Okay, that looks better. Now I'm going to create the mask on the lines, and then we are going to feather it by pressing F. Now I'm going to play around with the mask here. I want the lines to blend in. I don't want those lines to stand out too much. Okay, this looks good. Now I'm going to turn it into 3D. And so we can see in the perspective. Now I'm going to mask this. We're going to follow the same process that we did. And then I'm going to apply the feather by pressing F. And it blends really well. I like this. Okay, now I'm going to go to text PC again. And we are going to play with mask here. And you don't have to be perfect here. And you don't have to put this much work in this section. Now I'm going to add the texture here because I want the lines to have the grungy look. Now I'm going to duplicate the lines. And then I'm going to use alpha mate like this. And I'm going to scale down the texture, but I'm still not satisfied with this. Now I'm going to parent everything to this lined paper so that I can scale it down and up and I can move everything at once. Now I'm going to parent this mask path to this. And we do this by picking up this pick whip tool. Okay, now I'm going to resize the texture. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to apply levels here because I want the lines to be white. And I'm going to play around with some properties here. I don't like this at all. I'm going to resize this. And then I'm going to add motion tile. Okay, now I'm going to hide the bottom layer and then I'm going to expand the output height. Now I'm going to play around with the scale of the composition and I want it to stay behind the subject. Okay, this looks good. Now I'm going to add a new element. I'm going to duplicate the home. I'm going to change the Z property to 180. Now I'm going to play around how I want end results to look. Okay, you might have to play around a little bit if you are not a pro at this. Now I'm going to change the name of this to home upper PC so that I can identify it. Now I'm going to bring the bottom home a bit down so that the text stays in the center. As you can see, the effect is starting to look really good. Now I'm going to resize the home. Okay, this looks better. And now I'm going to apply the camera lens blur effect. It gives a nice depth to everything, but I'm going to switch it to 2. Now I'm going to play around with the Z rotation here. I'm going to make it a bit extreme than it was. Okay, I'm now going to work on text again. Okay, so I made a mistake here. I used a method to create the text animation that I wasn't really comfortable with, and that took me longer than I expected it to be. So here I'm going to show you alternate and rather quick method to create text animation that you can see on the screen. And so I'm going to use different composition here. And I do this just to show you how this method works. Okay, so here we have our text. I'm going to select the text and then I'm going to right click on it and then I'm going to choose create shapes from text. And it basically turns text into shapes. Now I'm going to go up and remove the fill first, and then I'm going to turn on the stroke and the white color, and now I'm going to play around with the stroke width, and we can change it anytime we want, so don't worry about that. I'm going to go into contents and then click on add and then choose trim paths. Now the trim path has been added, and now go into the trim path property and we are going to play around with the and property here, but make sure that individually is selected here, and so it appears, the letters appear individually. And as you can see, the effect is starting to be visible, and this is what I want. I'm going to start keyframing. So I'm going to add keyframe on the end and then go 10 frames, and then I'm going to change the end property to 100. And then I'm going to easy ease this. Okay, and now we have our basic animation ready. Now I'm going to turn on the text layer and I'm going to press U. Now I'm going to create mask on the text layer, and we are going to animate the mask path in the same time as that of the trim path. Okay, now I'm going to select this and I'm going to move the mask like this. Now I'm going to easy ease this, and then I'm going to cut the outlines, and it's done. It's that simple. So I'm going to now play around with the timing. Now I'm going to go to text PC. Okay, so I need to make some changes here. So I'm going to reset the levels effect here. And then I'm going to play with input white to, I'm going to change it to 0. Okay, so this looks good. I'm going to play with the keyframes here to make sure that the timing gets right. You have to get this timing intuitively. I mean, you can't plan this. You just have to work it out on your own and see what fits and how you like it. Okay, so we are going to work on the text composition, and I'm going to create an adjustment layer.
Pause! So, an adjustment layer in After Effects is like a special layer that lets you apply effects and changes to all the layers below it without altering them directly. The transform effect in After Effects lets you move, scale, and rotate a layer to change its position, size, and orientation in your composition, meaning transform. Effect gives you additional control over layers. Until we meet again!
And then I'm going to rename it to wiggle here, and I'm going to add the transform effect to create the wiggle, and we are going to keyframe the position here in order to create the wiggle on the text. So I'm going to add keyframe on the first frame, and then I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to go 30 frames ahead, and then I'm going to play around, and I think I want the Y position to be animated, and I'm going to change the value on the Y position, and then copy and paste the keyframe from the first frame to the last frame. Then I'm going to add toggle hold keyframe. Okay, so this is how it is going to look. I'm going to bring value down. Okay, so this is how it is going to look. We want it to be subtle, so remember that. Now I'm going to add in expression by pressing Alt and click on the stopwatch, and then I'm going to add in loop out expression. Now I'm going to go back to the main composition and bring down the opacity. Text PC, and this looks faster. I want the duration to be longer, so I'm going to press Alt and then I'm going to drag the keyframes. Now I'm going to go back into the main composition and then I'm going to start animating the position. So I'm going to add a keyframe on the position property, and then I'm going to go 20 frames, and then I'm going to add another keyframe, and then I'm going to animate the Y position, and then I'm going to time reverse the keyframes, and then I'm going to easy ease them. Okay, now I'm going to cut this composition by pressing this shortcut. Okay, this looks better. Now I'm going to go back into the text PC. Now I'm going to start adding some additional text, that is the dates. So I'm going to add date. I'm going to adjust it. Now I'm going to play around with the color. I'm going to create the line for the bottom, but I want this line to be dashed line. And so I'm going to change the color first. And then I'm going to add 5 or 5 as the stroke value. And I want the color to match the other lines already existing in the composition. I'm going to bring it down with this. Looks better. Now, first of all, I'm going to bring it below the wiggle adjustment layer. Then I'm going to go into contents, shape 1, stroke, and then I'm going to find dashes and then click on the plus icon, and then dash is created. I'm going to play around with the dash until I'm satisfied. And now I'm going to play around with the offset until satisfied. Okay, now I'm going to change the color back to the original color and bring it down below the wiggle adjustment layer. I'm going to go back into the main composition to see how things are looking. Now I'm going to resize the text PC composition. I'm going to go back into the text PC. Now I'm going to resize the text date, and then I'm going to change the stroke using the pen tool. Now I'm going to bring it up and make it look better. Now I'm going to go back into the main composition and it looks much better. Now I'm going to scale up. Now, to be honest, I'm not a fan of this position property animation that is taking place here, but it's okay. I may delete that later. Now I'm going to create an adjustment layer for camera lens blur. I'm going to call this blur. And now I'm going to add an effect called camera lens blur. It does what it sounds like. Okay. And I'm going to cut it at some point like this, using this shortcut that you see on the screen. And now I'm going to keyframe it. And then I'm going to press U to bring up the keyframe, and then I'm going to change the final keyframe to 0. So we start from blur to non-blur, okay? And it goes something like this. It's as if the motion of the text is giving or creating this blur. Now I'm going to rescale the text PC. And I'm going to adjust the position of the text. I'm going to bring it even lower, and it looks something like this. Now I'm going to bring the rotation property on the null even closer. And I'm going to open the scale property and scale down this text. I'm going to turn on the motion blur in every layer. Now I'm going to bring up the keyframes by pressing U, and I'm going to add a random Y position animation on the camera to give a movement to the camera. We don't want it to be just a steady zoom in, zoom out. We want it to have subtle movements here and there. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the position property, but I'm going to do that in null, I guess. Now I'm going to create the keyframe here with this shortcut. And then I'm going to create the keyframe in between. And so I'm going to change the position in the middle. I'm going to make it look as if we are moving, and to give the camera even more movement. And I'm going to adjust this until text looks like center subject. Okay, now it looks something like this. As you can see, we have great movement on the camera thanks to our camera controller. Okay, so I'm now going to add a keyframe on the upper home, and I'm going to change the Y position, and I'm going to get it out of the screen. Now I'm just testing this. I may not use it for the final product, but I'm just trying different things here. Okay, this looks stunning. I like this. But I still want the home to be there. Now I'm going to play with some camera property here, camera position here. Now I'm going to adjust the text and the home. Okay, that looks great. Motion looks great. Everything looks great. Okay, I'm getting rid of the position property on the home, and then I'm going to adjust the camera lens blur because the blur isn't looking that great. Now I'm going to easy ease these keyframes. Okay, so this looks good. Now I'm getting rid of the position keyframe on the text as well, because let the text be there. We're going to do something else about it. So I'm going to add camera lens blur on text. And we are going to make something different with this. Now I'm going to add the keyframe on blur radius, and then I'm going to come back and add another one. Now I'm going to change it to 0. And now I'm going to easy ease them. Now I'm going to copy paste and then time reverse keyframe. Now I'm going to copy and paste it there. again those keyframes. So what these keyframes are doing is that it is kind of making blur during the motion, and so it looks as if the blur is created by the movement of the camera, but we are manually creating it. I'm going to go into text PC. I'm going to parent mask to the text, and so we can move wherever we want. I'm going to adjust the text here. I'm going to move back into the main composition and see how it looks. Now I'm going to expand the duration of the camera lens blur to 10 frames, and I'm going to do the same with the keyframes as well. Now I'm going to bring in the elements. Now I'm going to bring the final elements in the composition, and I'm going to bring the particles here. I'm going to change the scale of this until it fits the composition. And then I'm going to play with the blending mode. Add looks good. Now I'm going to change opacity. Now I'm going to add an effect called levels. And I'm going to play around with the properties here, but I'm not satisfied with it, so I'm going to change it. Now as you can see, this particle system or this particle video is more visible and it looks better. Now we are going to change the opacity, because that was too much, and this looks better. Now I'm going to apply the time remap by pressing Ctrl Alt T, and then I'm going to add the loop out expressions. In that way, the video will be repeated throughout the composition. Okay, now I'm going to bring the texture here. So I'm going to grab this scratch texture, and then I'm going to change the blending mode to overlay, or I should say multiply, and then I'm going to change it to soft light. I'm going to try different things here until something fits. Now I'm going to add glow to our text. Now I'm going to play around with the properties until I get what I want. I'm going to change the threshold to 40. I want to reduce the intensity, but it doesn't look good, so I'm going to press Ctrl Z. I'm going to play around with glow radius. I think 5 would look much better. Okay, it looks nice. Now you can see the difference. This one looks much better. Text with the glow, and we are done here. Okay, so I have imported the file here, and now I'm just checking things, and as you can see, I haven't renamed layers. And first of all, I'm going to duplicate the car by pressing Ctrl+ D, and we are going to use this car to cover up the distortions that has been created on the picture. And now after duplicating it, I'm going to rotate it and then scale it up, and we are going to cover up distortions with the car. I'm going to rename. This should have been done in the Photoshop, but I didn't. Now I'm going to select all three, and then I'm going to pre-compose it. And I'm going to call it bg_image3 pc and hit OK. And then I'm going to go into the comp, and then we're going to start working on this. So first of all, I'm going to drop a keyframe on the position property of the car. Then I'm going to go 10 frames, and then I'm going to adjust this, change this position property, and as you can see, the effect is starting to come up. Then I'm going to push the keyframe out of the timeline. Now we are going to use some cheap tricks here. I'm going to select rounded rectangle, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle around the car, and we are going to use this rectangle to create a shadow. And then I'm going to bring it below the car, and now I'm going to adjust it according to the shape of the car, and I'm going to rotate it after bringing the anchor point to the center. And now I'm going to use the effect fast box blur, and then I'm going to increase the blur radius, and then I'm going to decrease the size until it looks kind of unnatural. As you can see, it looks natural. And then I'm going to rename the shadow to car shadow, and I'm going to rename this as well. And car 1 is going to be our main car, and then I'm going to call this car patch, and then I'm going to bring this car to here because this distortion is more visible, and then I'm going to rotate it like this, and then I'm going to hit Ctrl D again, and I'm going to place it right there. And I'm going to rotate it until the distortion has been covered, and I'm going to bring slightly out like this. Now we're going to duplicate the car shadow again, and then I'm going to bring it below the car patch, and then I'm going to rotate it and then resize it. And as you can see, it looks good, doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to go into the rectangle, and then I'm going to increase the roundness of it, give better edges, and then I'm going to rotate it until it matches the axis of the car. I'm going to give the same color to everything so that I can see correctly, and then I'm going to duplicate the shadow again and give color to this, and then I'm going to bring the shadow below this second patch that you see on the screen. And this patch may not, this car may not be visible in the final result, but I have to cover up the distortion. And now I'm going to give blue color to this. And now I'm going to parent the shadow to car 1. And so as you can see, the effect is starting to look better. Now I'm going to push the keyframe further so that it takes time. Now I'm going to go back into the main composition. And as I play this, you can see the car looks better. And now I'm going to turn on the main layer. Now I'm going to rename this to shoes, not shows, shoes. And then I'm going to pre-compose it. Like I said in the previous lectures that you have to pre-compose everything if you want to work faster. Okay. And now we are going to duplicate the already existing composition that we have worked on. So this is the already existing composition, and let me pause for a second here and let me tell you what we did. So basically this is the same composition that we created in the previous lectures. But what I have done here is I have created two more blurs. I have duplicated the blurs twice, and then I have pasted it on the timeline, and that's the only difference here. Okay. Okay, now what we are going to do is we are going to replace the comps so we can directly change it. So I'm going to replace the sky with the background.
Okay, so to replace layers in After Effects, click on the layer that you want to replace, then Alt click or Option click the new asset in your project, and then drag the new asset on top of the original layer in your timeline. Okay, that's how you replace the layers in After Effects.
Now this is the reason why renaming is extremely important, especially if you are doing multiple images at a time. Now I'm going to hide this both, and I am going to replace shoes instead of that guy, and then I'm going to scale it down until it fits. As you can see, this already looks better, and this could be done in 10 to 15 minutes or even faster if your video doesn't have much elements. Now I'm going to adjust the text here. Now we are going to duplicate the already existing text, and then we are going to replace it here. Okay, so I'm just going to see how things are looking, and as you can see, the shoes are misplaced here. Don't worry, we are going to take care of that. Now I'm going to select shoes, and then I'm going to adjust it at the first frame. Look at the frame. I'm doing it at the first frame. I'm just testing out how things are looking, and due to the full resolution, the preview is a bit slowed because this project had too many files. Okay, I'm going to adjust the shoes again. Now I'm going to select the null, and I'm going to remove the parent from the camera, and then I'm going to open the position property on the camera. I'm just testing things here. Now I'm going to adjust the shoes again. I'm going to scale it up. Okay, so we are now going to work on the text, and then I'm going to fast forward this because we are going to work on text animation, and the method that I have shown in this video should not be used. It will take longer than the method that I have previously shown in this chapter that you see on the screen. If you don't remember it, go refer that chapter right now for the text animation. And I'm going to fast forward this so you can still see how I used this method that I don't like much. Okay, so we are back in the main composition, And as you can see, this effect looks really good. And I'm going to adjust the text just like that. I'm going to adjust it until I'm satisfied. Now I'm going to resize it to 120 because it looks way bigger. Now we are going to animate shoes. So I'm going to add a keyframe on X rotation, 2 keyframes on X rotation, and then I'm going to go to the first frame and then I'm going to animate X rotation. And I'm going to add animation on the keyframe on the scale property. And I'm going to go at 2 keyframes and then I'm going to change the scale property on the first frame. And then I'm going to easy ease this. And then I'm going to select our first 2 keyframe and then I'm going to push it out of the timeline. And as you can see, this looks good. Now I'm going to solo the shoes so that I can get better perspective of the motion. I'm going to time reverse the keyframe just to see how it looks, and this looks better. Now I'm going to change the opacity because now as you can see, the effect looks really good. Now I'm going to go into the BG comp and then I'm going to play around with the keyframe, the timing of the car. I'm just going to play around with it until I'm satisfied. Now I'm going to go back into the main composition and see how things are looking here. As you can see, the effect looks pretty good. Okay, so we are now going to work on the text. And so I'm going to duplicate this. And then I'm going to cut it like this. And then I'm going to rescale it. And I'm going to cut this as well. And then I'm going to get rid of the mask. And then I'm going to change the scale of this. And then I'm going to adjust the layers like this. And then I'm going to adjust it. And then I'm going to paste the text that I want to appear. And I'm going to adjust it just like this. And here we are not going to animate it manually. We are going to use a plugin called Animation Composer. It's a lifesaver. And I'm going to go into the pre-comps and then transitions, and I'm going to use the glitch. I love glitch on this, and so I'm going to use the short glitch, and then I'm going to press add, and just like that the glitch has been created. But this is too much, so I'm going to bring down the opacity to 20 or 40. And let's see. As you can see, this looks stunning like this. Text with the glow. Now I'm going to go back into the main composition, and now I'm going to expand this layer, particle layer. I'm going to get rid of the null, and then I'm going to create a new null here, and then I'm going to adjust it like this, and then I'm going to turn it into 3D, then parent camera to this null. And then I'm going to drop the keyframe on the rotation property. And then I'm going to copy these keyframes and paste it there. and then I'm going to play around with different properties and see what looks better, what doesn't. Now I'm going to drop the keyframe on the position property as well, but I'm going to drop 2 keyframes so if I mess up, I can use the position that was the normal position that was created, and so we can get back to the normal position. So what we do is we basically create 2 keyframes and then we add another keyframe in between, and we play around with the in between keyframe. So keep that in mind. You have to sustain the starting position or the rotation of the layer. Now I'm going to easy is this. Let's see how this looks. As you can see, this looks better. Now there is this tone difference that is created due to this scratch texture that you see on the screen. So I'm going to expand it. And we are done here. You have to take risks in your life, because not taking risk is a risk. Hey, welcome to this bonus section. In this chapter, I'm going to break down how I made this video that you see on the screen, and how I used all the tools that I have already shown you in the previous chapters to create something different this time. Okay, so first of all, let me turn on this. So this CC, this layer is an adjustment layer, and I have used 2 effects, and this is basically color correction. And so I have used 2 effects. One of them is sharpen and the other one is hue and saturation. I have desaturated some things here. Okay, and the other effect you can apply to this is also the curves effect. The curves effect works really well with basic color correction. Okay, so after that I have added 2 blurs, and I'm trying to give an authentic vibe to it. Okay, I'll show you in a bit how I use the second one. After that, there is this camera controller, that is null 8, and then there is the camera. So basic work we did in the previous chapters, and then there is this particle and then the texture. Okay. Now the important part here is the elements. Okay, so we have 4 elements here, 5 elements here. So the first one is a bird like coming into a camera, and then the three birds are basically, I have adjusted them and placed them at a random Z position. Now there is this surfer, and then I created the shadow by duplicating it and placing the anchor point at the bottom, and then I stretched it manually. Okay, and after that I used effects like, first of all I applied fill, and then I used levels. Okay, and then I used fast box blur to give the blurry effect, and that's how I created the shadow. Okay, so basically there was this distortion that was created due to this effect. So motion tile was basically creating a distortion here, and to be honest, I noticed this distortion at the end. I didn't want to make changes again. Okay, so what I did, I downloaded this PNG, this man back PNG from the internet, and then I've placed it where there was distortion, and so that's the basic of this composition. And then the main and the most important part here is the background. Okay, now this could be confusing for some, but the most important part here is the text. So all the things that you see on the screen, for example, I've removed the subject, that is the surfer here, from this, and all the files that you see, like for example this is basically me being a rookie user of Photoshop, so don't worry about that. I have already shown you and taught you how you can remove the background more efficiently. This was before I was really efficient at it. Okay, so don't take this into consideration. Okay, now the most important part here is text. So I haven't created this text from the Photoshop. I have created this text in After Effects, and I'm going to show you how I did it. Okay, so first of all, let me find background PC. So I'm going to duplicate this. Now I'm going to get rid of this so that I can show you how I did it. Okay, before we begin, there is something important that you need to know. Okay, and that is, let me go back to the main comp to show you. So whenever you want two things to move in the same speed and to stay in the same position, you have to pre-compose. Okay, so the biggest mistake that I made while designing this and while creating this was that I accidentally created this text in a different composition than that of the background. So what happens is, when you do that, the 3D camera is going to have a little bit of a lag between both of them. Like one of them is going to move faster, the other one may not, and the parenting may not always work. At least in my case, it didn't work because there were some animations there. Okay, and so keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I made the text. So first of all, I'm going to create a new solid. Let's call it grid. Okay, now I'm going to apply an effect called grid to this. Okay, so the grid has been applied, and now I'm going to turn this into a 3D layer. Okay, now I'm going to rotate it in the direction of the beach. So I want it to be in the same perspective as that of beach. Okay, and you don't have to be accurate as well here. And I'm going to move this just a bit down. Okay, so we have our perspective set. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create text. I'm going to call this grid. So I'm using this text, this font. Okay, now I'm going to turn it into a 3D as well. Now remember, this is the most important step. So I'm going to hold shift, and then I'm going to parent this to this and see what happens. And just like that, the text has been parented to the grid, and the text is now in the same perspective as that of grid. Okay, so let me rescale the text. I used that shortcut to recenter the anchor point. And so as you can see, I'm now getting my text in the perspective. Okay, and so if I want, I can rescale it using the grid, just like that. Now I'm going to rotate it, and then I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. Now I'm going to give this a rotation, and then I'm going to scale this down. Okay, now I'm going to hide this. No, not. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to adjust the text. I want the text to be out like this. Okay, now I'm going to hide this, and now I'm going to use an effect called gradient ramp. So I'm going to type in ramp on the text. And let me turn down the resolution. And now I'm going to pick this color and going to go there. And then I'm going to try blending mode. This looks better. This looks nice too. Different things here. This one looks better. So I'm going to just take this here. Then I'm going to hit P to bring up opacity. And we have our text in perspective. Okay, so that's how I have created this text. And then I have this texture that I have applied here. Let me show the texture to you. This texture that I have applied here is a half-tone texture. Okay, so it's a basic texturing effect. I'm sure you know that. And so that's how I created this. Okay, so find the project file of this and experiment it. Experiment with it, play with it. If you want, you can also use this as a template for other projects as well. And finally, let me show you something that I haven't shown you. And so I have used this second camera lens blur here. So let me show you keyframes on both of them. So I'm going to press U to bring up the keyframe. So it begins at 0 and then it goes up to 15. Now I want audience to be able to read and focus only on text. And that's why I have used this second camera lens blur effect here. And then it also gives us the movement. Also, let me turn this on so we can see better. Okay, so I basically used this to give depth to the elements. Okay, and that's how I used it. And let me show you the keyframe on the first blur as well. So I've used 3 keyframes here and I've used 4 keyframes here. So basically we go from blur, super blur to non-blur. Okay, and it goes hand in hand with the movement of the camera. Most of the animation in this video has been created through the camera. I haven't used camera controller or null 8 to control everything. And so that's how you do it. Please find the project files. This lesson I'm going to break down how to pick an image so that you don't waste your time on working on the masks and on the masking and then you realize that, oh, I picked a wrong image. So this video will help you on how to pick images, and I've chosen different scenarios and different images so that you can see how things are working and what images do you choose and what you don't choose. Okay, and the first thing that you must ask yourself is that, can I isolate the main subject in this image? Okay, and that's the basic question that you have to ask yourself. Okay, so let's begin with example 1. So this is the first example that I want you to see. Now, what do you think of this image? Now, if you ask me, I would give it 50% that this may or may not work, because the subject is huge here. First of all, you have to deal with two things. The first one is the shadow, and then there is this actual structure that you see. Okay, now the problem that you are going to run into is that the shadow and the structure are going to move at different speed, which is going to mess things up, and you might have to use some advanced techniques like masking and keyframing the mask as well. Okay, so I'd say you should skip images like this. But especially if you are not advanced, if you are beginner, you should stay away from images like that. But if you still want to do it, what I would suggest is that I would pre-compose both of them. I would isolate both of them in Photoshop and then pre-compose them. And then I would make this railing that you see here, I would consider it as a foreground. Okay. And then I would consider this part and this part and the sky as the background, and then I will use tree like this to cover the distortion that will be created. Okay, you can do that, but I would still say that you should skip images like this if you are beginner, because it could be tough, and it might be tough because isolating the reflection is not going to be that easy. But here the reflection is pretty clear, and so it may work if you are advanced, and if you want, any image could work. Okay. Now let's look at the other image. Okay, so this image is absolutely beautiful, as you can see, because the subject is isolated already. All you have to do is just select the selection, use the selection tool, and the subject is now isolated. Okay, so what you can do is you can basically isolate only two things. So you can isolate the subject and then the image. Okay, now what you can do is you can add an 3D rotation, slow rotation plus zoom in, and if you want you can add some elements. You can add some elements, but the thing about the element, and that you should remember, is that every time you want to add element, it should be in context of the image. For example, if you are in a desert, you cannot add seagulls, or you could not add sound effects of sea or ocean waves, right? So you should keep that in mind, that every time you add elements, additional elements to hide the distortion, you should always take the image into consideration, like what would be better, what, like in this weather, what could be better. So for example, you could add fog here, and to make or you could cover up distortion using some other things. Okay, for example, you could use birds here, you could use trees here, but as you can see, there are no trees visible, and it's not possible to have trees here. So it would be a bad idea to add trees here. Okay, so you cannot even add trees or leaves for this. Okay, you can add different things like particles, but I don't think you should add. So whenever it comes to elements, always choose elements in the context of the image. Don't choose it, like for example, if you want to show a hot day, you cannot add snow in the particles. Okay, I mean that's a common sense, but I think it need to be said. Okay, so these are the two images. Okay, so now we have this image here. So what do you think of this? So I think this image is stunning. It is going to work really, really well. First of all, the subject is isolated on its own, so you don't have so much work to do. Okay, then this railing could be considered as the mid ground, meaning the subject is going to be our focus. Okay, so this railing and this ground that you see, this can all be isolated on a single layer after you have isolated the subject here. And this apartment or the home or whatever it is, that and the sky can be used as a background. So this is going to be a really great image. So what I would do is I would isolate this and I would make really slow swinging effect here, and I would also add a car here in the background, but I would make sure that it matches the blur of this background that you see. Okay, so that you have to remember that the element must blend in with the background. You don't need element to be blended out, like you don't need them to stand out, but you need them to be visible, and don't overdo elements. For example, use 1 or 2 elements, maximum 3, but apart from that 2 moving elements are enough. Okay, and at the end you can also add sound effects to sound effects are really important. So that's what I would do here, and this would really look great. Okay, and then let's look at another image. Okay, so what do you think of this image? Now, of course, this image is stunning, but this won't work for Parallax. Why? Because we have no foreground, no background. I mean, you can choose this subject, but the problem, choose this structure as the subject. But the problem you are going to face is that there is no foreground or background, because everything is located on the same plane. You see that everything is on the same plane. So even if you do it, it's not going to look great. I mean, you can just add in, zoom out effect here and animate some buses and cars moving around here and there, but I don't think it's going to look that great. So my suggestion is that you ignore anything from the top view, because the top view is not going to have any foreground, midground or background or anything at all. Okay, it's going to be a flat image. So ignore anything like this. You don't want to waste your time on this and then to realize that, oh, I don't have anything to show the depth of the image. Okay, now let's see this image. What do you think of this image? Now this image is stunning, and as I'm sure you can tell by now that you have so much data here to create Parallax. Okay, so the first thing that I would do is I would not isolate this layer alone, meaning I would not isolate the person here, but I would isolate the entire thing here. For example, I would isolate him with this rock here. Okay, and then I would isolate this as well, this mountain that you see that has different tint, and then I would isolate the background, and then I would isolate the tree. I would isolate the sky here. Okay, I would keep the sky away from it, and then I would just simply add a basic zoom in, zoom out, or I would use the basic technique that has been used in the course so far. Okay, so this is really important that you understand and create the eye for it. So this is really important. And another thing here is that with elements you should also keep in mind the light. The light is important part in photography. I'm not a photographer. I haven't even captured a single picture like this, but what I can tell from learning animation and this concept so far is lighting is crucial. Make sure that if you add some elements, make sure that the light is reflecting or give some depth of light to it. In short, your element must blend with the image. That is crucial, extremely important. It's extremely important here. The reason why I did not show you or taught you how to animate this fox video is because the leaves and everything here seems out of place. Okay, the elements didn't blend in really much. I mean, I tried to apply hue and saturation to this, but I didn't like it, and so I didn't teach it to you. Okay, I hope you understand. So this image, now let's see. Now this is the another image. Okay, so what do you think of this? Now if you ask me, this is going to be a tough job to create a parallax effect, because for example, let's say you are going to select this two person as primary subject. Okay, so what's going to happen is that you are going to have a hard time separating the foreground and the background, because the foreground, that is this stairs, and background, that is this stairs, are the same, are made with the same structure, meaning they both are stairs. So if you apply parallax to this, what you are going to do is you are going to separate both of them. Okay, and this is going to look weird at the end. So make sure that you don't choose images like this, where the foreground structure and the background structure are blended or they are the same. Okay, this won't work. And moreover, what is going to happen is that you don't have the full data on this gate. Okay, you see there is no data on the gate like this side. You can, of course you can duplicate it and use Photoshop to like recreate it and use mask to recreate it, but I don't think you should do that. This image isn't really made for parallax. Okay, and I want you to develop an eye for this. Now this is a beautiful image. What do you think of this? Now if you ask me, yes, this is stunning. This is a beautiful image. You can do so many things here. But first of all, you are going to have, this is going to be the easiest image that you see. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to make this bird my primary subject, or if I want, I can also create my primary subject here. And that is the beauty about this effect, is that if you don't have a subject, you can create a subject. See, in animation, there is no limitation. The only limitation you have is your thinking. Okay, I want you to remember this, because in animation, we limit ourselves too much. You don't have to limit yourself here. Your only limitation is your imagination and your thinking. You are bound by nothing but yourself. Anyways, I would separate the bird. I would isolate these mountains, and then I would isolate this. But because since this image is too plain, it could come off as too boring. So what I would do is I would add some text here. For example, I would add text behind the mountain, and for that I need to isolate the sky as well. Okay, so what I would do is I would add some inspirational text, for example, like never give up, something like that, behind the mountains, and I might also make that reflect in the ocean as well. And meanwhile, the bird is flying towards the camera, and I would add some sound effect to like sell the effect. Okay, but I would make sure that it's not longer than 5 to 10 seconds. Okay, and that's important, because people don't need to know how you have done this, and that is the crucial part, that people don't need to know that you have turned a picture into a video. That is the most important part that you have to remember. Okay, now if you want to add element, you can add elements like, for example, I already told you that I would add text, and then you could add some motion graphics here as well. Okay, for example, you can add some cartoons. I guess that might work here. But one of the principles that you should remember is KISS, keep it simple, stupid. It's the principle that I learned from a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I always use it everywhere. Okay, you don't have to complicate things. Keep it simple. Okay, you can do this. Okay, now let's see another image. Okay, so this is a beautiful image. What do you think of this? Okay, so I'm sure you can tell our subject is going to be the lady here. Okay, and the problem that you might run into is her legs, because there is going to be distortion here. But the good thing about this is that you can use this crop to cover it up. And so here is what I would do. First, I would isolate the subject, that is the lady here. And then I would isolate. Now I would not separate the trees and this land, because as you can see, they are blended in and they are on the same plane, visible plane. Okay. And so I would isolate this entire thing into one layer. Okay. So I would call this, let's call this foreground, for example. And then I would isolate the sky. So we have 3 layers. The first is the lady here. The second one is the foreground here, and then there is the tree as the background. Now the beautiful thing about this is that there is no limits for elements here. You could add a plane in the sky, you could add birds here, you could add anything that you want. But like I said, make sure that your element has context of the image. It shouldn't be outside, you don't need to add a dinosaur. I mean, it would make things creative. Okay, so you could also add dinosaurs or some things that you like. See, there are no, like I said before, there are no limits. Don't be bounded by my thinking and by my concepts as well. Create your own concepts. But my point is that if you are going to add dinosaur, if you are going to add some aliens or something like that, make sure that it is blended in the background. Now, what do you think of this image? Of course, this image is absolutely stunning because we have so much data here. First of all, there is this subject here, and the subject would be this entire boat would be a subject here with the lady. And you don't want to separate the lady and the boat here, because that would create a separation between them. And since he is standing on that, you shouldn't separate it. Okay, so I would keep them on the same layer, and then I would separate the background and this boat, because I don't think I want the movement. So I'm going to keep this boat and the subject and our subject on the same plane, but I would separate the sea, and then I would also separate these mountains that you see. But since it's blurry, Photoshop is going to have some problems with this. And also I would try to animate the clouds as well. Okay, so what I would do here is I would since everything is separated, and then everything is gone from the since everything is isolated, I would just add some I would add some text here behind the lady, the write-on effect with something like, I don't know, something inspirational, follow your passion or something like that. Okay, I would add that behind the lady, and then I would animate it. Meanwhile, the parallax is in the process. For example, I would add zoom in with some camera movement, because there is going to be so much distortion here if you don't do that. So we don't need so much movement here, but I would add some text, cool text behind the lady. Okay, and the thing about the text, using the text or some other element, is that you should use it where you don't have any option, or you want to distract audience from finding out about the flaws of the image. Okay, you should use text everywhere where you think that, oh, I don't think this is going to be great. For example, if you chose an image that didn't work, for example, let's say you chose this image. Now you have isolated the subject here. Okay, for example, let's say this structure is the subject here, and you have isolated some buses here. Now what's done is done. Okay, you have made a mistake, it's okay. So what you could do is you could still add parallax effect. I'm not going to say that you can't, but it's not going to look that great. But when it doesn't look great, what you can do is you can distract your audience with different elements. For example, there is this distortion visible on the screen, or something looks like it's lagging. Okay, what you can do is you can add birds. For example, let a bird fly through the entire video. Meanwhile, the distortion is going on, and give some shake to it. Okay, so it looks like a real drone footage. Okay, and that's the point. And that's what I want you to understand, that you don't have to be bounded by my thinking as well. Think for yourself. Learn to think for yourself. This world wants you to be in the box. Don't be in the box. Think outside of the box. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so this image is complicated for various reasons. One, the fog is going to be so difficult to manage. You could separate this building because it's visible more than anything else, but I don't think this is going to be that great of a parallax. What I would do is I would like mask this out. I would cut this on. I would keep only this much data. Okay, and then I would separate this building and everything else from it, and then I would add a 2D just same thing that we did in the previous lectures. I would do that. So these are the basic examples that I wanted you to understand, and make sure that you apply this knowledge, and make sure that you keep these things in mind. Choose and use your images wisely. Okay, that's it. Thank you.